Hello guys, sorry for somewhat late start. So actually had some technical problems along with the problems with my health in general. So you can probably notice that I'm still not healthy to the full. Yeah, so I still have some problems with my voice. So sorry for that. And for this reason, I will be doing not 2 hours plus today, but like somewhat standard, like 1 hour and a half, starting from this moment, of course. Let's go to playing to newcomers as usual. So today, because we have a bit shorter session, I will play less games, so something like 3 or 4 only, and then we will come back to one by one challenges. Okay, let me know if everything goes okay with the sound and the picture. Okay. Um, Trollfjord Paddler asks, by the way, Andre, did you get your rating points back that you lost to a cheater last Friday? Why do you think I lost to the cheater? So, do you have the evidence? Again, I told you guys not to accuse anybody for no reason. So, that's very strange. Okay. Okay. Anyways, let's get back to playing chess. There are a lot of different challenges. So let's start with newcomers, right? Don G already played. Okay. Yum from Austria. We have never played. Okay, 5 minute rated game. Premium user. Everything is okay, except. So, I'm playing with black. E4, E5. And F4, wow. King's Gambit. In the first game, but Bishop E2. Is it a good idea? I'm not sure. So maybe this provokes me to play Queen H4, right? Then King goes to F1, and then Knight F3 will be the move with the tempo. So I think instead of doing it, probably it's better for me just to focus on normal central moves. What I usually do against King's Gambit, I play something like Knight E7, preparing D5, or maybe Knight G6, protecting F4 pawn. I don't have doubts that Knight E7 against Bishop E2 should be also a normal move. So I just want to play Knight G6, if nothing else possible, protecting F4. And then continue my development normal way, like Bishop E7, castles, and so on. Knight C3, okay, fighting for D5 square. So let's get the knight to G6. Knight F3. Knight F3. And now what? Probably Bishop B4 deserves attention. Just a normal active square for the bishop. Fighting for the center indirectly. Also C6 preparing D5 looks very natural to me. Simple Bishop E7 can't be wrong. So let's try C6. It's interesting. Castles. Alright, so white is ready to play D4. Let us play D5. If Bishop B5 check, then simply Knight C6, I think. And I'm okay. Yeah, why not Knight C6? And if Rook E1 check, let's say, then simply Bishop E7 and castles. I still have an extra pawn. I don't have problems with the development. I think I'm all right. Long term, of course, d5 pawn is somewhat weak. But at the same time, white will have serious problems regaining the pawn, which is also good for me, so it gives me some good chances. d4. So f4 is not hanging, right? f4 is definitely not hanging at the moment, so I think I can play bishop e7 simply. Knight e5. Okay, attacking c6 knight. So now this probably gives white a chance to regain the pawn, because it looks like I have to take on e5 with g6 knight. At the same time, I guess after d takes e5, diagonal a7 g1 becomes interesting for me. So queen b6 check followed by d4 looks great. But then knight d5, so I have to be careful about that. Anyways, I think I have to take. Now d5 is hanging, right? So d4 closes diagonal. At the same time, it gives me some tempi for development. Let's say d4, if knight e4, then queen d5 looks interesting. Let's try d4. I don't think it's the best move. I have a feeling that bishop e6 was better. Simply developing the bishop, protecting the central pawn, and still having a chance to play queen b6 check, but okay. Knight e4. Okay, queen d5. Looks just a natural follow-up of the previous move. Occupying very good central square with the queen, attacking the bishop and the knight, and also the pawn on e5, so literally attacking everything that is hanging in white's position. So what white is going to do, to give up a light squared bishop with bishop c6 check, and then let's say to take on f4 with the rook, which looks quite dubious, or to play bishop d3, which is also not that great because I can take e5 pawn, even with the knight, or maybe queen e2, just protecting bishop b5, knight and e4, but this also drops the pawn on e5. I can easily take it with the queen, but this might be a bit dangerous for black, because of white's bishop takes f4. So playing with white, I would definitely prefer something like queen e2, unless there is some tactics, I don't know, connected with d3 or something. Okay, bishop takes c6, pawn takes c6. Now, at very least, I have a pair of bishops. At very least. So maybe I have something more. Okay, rook f4, now what? Queen takes c5, looks just a normal move, I must say, because I don't see dangerous counterattack for white. So let's just take this pawn, it is a very important one. Yeah, I still have extra pawn, pair of bishops. So, better center. I think I'm doing well. Next move will be castling probably. Maybe bishop to e6. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, I think rook f4 was a mistake. Instead, I would have preferred knight d6, maybe. At least grabbing my dark squared bishop. That's what I mean. Now I have a pair of bishops and extra pawn. I think my position should be gradually winning. Yeah, it's not a proper compensation for whites to have only some tricks on the king side, maybe in the center. Okay, what to do here? F5, looks promising, but in my opinion too early. But might be also a move f5, knight goes away, and then bishop g5 or something, but I would prefer just developing the pieces, why not? Okay, rook e1, knight f6 is an annoying threat, so let's put the queen on d5. Attacking a2, by the way. If nothing happens, I just take an a2 and I'm happy. Queen g3. Okay. If there is threat, maybe some minor issues again on f6 square, so why not just to go away with the king from the g file. I'm not in a rush, right? So everything should be just all right. Okay, c3 undermining d4 pawn doesn't look very dangerous. I already have some tricks like f5, bishop d6, but then knight goes to g5. I didn't like it. So probably just taking on a2 looks like a move. Yeah, grabbing the pawn. Preparing capture on b2, also interesting pawn to grab, why not? Okay, so d5 is probably prepared. So let's put queen on b6, pinning the d4 pawn. And now say bishop to d5, simply blockading this pawn forever. Yeah, it's lost. It's lost, but I still have to be a bit careful. Yeah. So, actually, it was already lost when I grabbed the pawn on e5. I think white should have played differently. So first of all, I'm not sure that bishop b5 was a great idea, but it looked quite natural, right? Knight c6, then d4, preparing knight e5. Looks normal. Bishop e7, knight e5 takes here, d4. So here probably the first moment. So instead of putting the knight on e4, which looks of course absolutely normal, active move, probably I would have preferred something like knight e2 instead, just attacking d4 and f4. Well, at least my queen d5 move is now not that efficient, so if I play queen d5, white can easily go away with the bishop to d3, saving this very important bishop on the board and having the threat of knight takes f4 with the tempo. So queen d5 is no longer a problem for white after knight e2. I would have probably played something like castles here, creating a threat of knight takes e5, and I think position should be more or less balanced. So I have tricks connected with queen b6 move, attacking the bishop and intending to play d3 after that. I have e5 as an object of attack, but white also has some objects. So knight takes f4, knight takes d4, bishop takes f4, so bishop takes c6 followed by knight d4. There are a lot of different interesting ways for white to play here. After knight e4, I think I'm already better. So queen goes to d5, simply attacking everything. Bishop c6 was probably not the best decision here again. I would prefer bishop d3 or queen e2. And after bishop c6, bc6, I think here it was the last chance for white to fight. It was possible to play knight d6 check, and after bishop d6, pawn d6, and queen d6, to take on f4 with the bishop. So black is a pawn up, but we can see that, well, black still has to complete the development, which is probably not that simple, because white has concrete tricks like rook e1 check, and then bishop e5 or rook e5. So let's say after queen d5, it looks very dangerous. So check, bishop e6, then rook e5 or bishop e5, attacking d4 and g7, and so on. So white definitely has some play here. And if even black solves the problems of the development and everything else quickly here, and simply has an extra pawn, we have opposing colored bishops, right? So white definitely will have counterplay based on this factor. So there will be a possibility to create an attack on the king side, at very least, I think. So that was a good idea to play knight e6 here, because after rook f4 and queen e5, I simply have pair of bishops, as I said during the game, and extra material for no compensation. That's the point. Okay, so let us continue playing. Sorry for this strange voice. I do hope I will recover quickly. At least my voice will sound good again during the next training Tuesday. By the way, sorry premium members for just skipping the previous episode last Tuesday. I had no physical possibility to do that. Sorry for that. So, Phenomenon, I think we played already. Yeah. Player number 5 already played. Played. Moby, of course, we played. Sky 7 played. Haima, premium user, or Haima, I don't know. Premium user, 5 minutes, never played. Accept. And again, I'm playing with black. Okay. So, it's your turn to move, my friends. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Sorry for that. Let's go further. So, Bobby Preacher, also never played. Let's do it. Knight f3, knight f6. So something closed, right? Something closed. d4. Maybe we will transpose to, yeah, probably it will be Catalan quite soon. Yeah. Bishop b7, castles. And we have Catalan if white plays c4. But white doesn't want to play c4. Just a bit passive, but probably also completely playable approach. Let's try this. So why not to mate b3 with the a5 move? Because definitely white wants to play bishop b2, right? In this case, I just play a4, already creating a threat of a3. So at very least, I just grab the space there on the queen side. And if a4, now every time when white wants to play c4, he has to understand that this weakens b4 square forever. This might be not very good. So, how to complete the development? Because I had the same problem. So if I play c5, this weakens b5. Maybe that is not a big deal, but I have to understand that prior to making any sort of decisions. So let's start with the b6. I want to put my bishop on a6 maybe. Controlling c4 square, exerting some pressure on e2. Again, at very least, it is much better placed on a6 than on c8. Rook e1, maybe preparing e4. Maybe, not sure. But this looks like a normal plan for white here. To play knight c3 or knight e2 and then to play e4. So what about just putting the knight on e4 myself? Is it possible in this position or not? Might be an interesting idea. At least I fight white's plans. I'm sure it's not the best move here. I think the best move should be something like c5. But this also makes sense. So I think if I play knight c6 here, controlling e5 square, it should be absolutely equal. There is also a possibility for me to play bishop b4, trying to exploit the weakness of c3 square. Yeah, this might be an interesting idea. So if knight takes c4, then I take on e1, I guess. And I'm up in exchange. If knight doesn't take on e4, then, well, at least I prevented knight e5. Because knight e2 will be hanging, and I want to play knight c3 at some point. Let's try it. Looks promising. Oh, this drops the pawn. Yeah, this looks like just a blunder. Let's see. Knight c3, queen c2. Okay, I can go back with the knight, I think. Yes, it shouldn't be bad. So let's take it. Oh. Now I have pair of bishops in addition to extra pawn. Yeah, should be winning already for black. Let's say c5. So I can't see compensation. So simply extra pawn, pair of bishops, better control over the center. Yeah. Should be just very good for black. So knight d7, preparing rook to c8, also protecting c5 additionally, and controlling e5 square, preventing white's knight to e5. And then my knight can go to f6 if necessary. But I think everything will be decided on the queen side quite soon. I have a lot of useful moves there. So rook c8, queen e7, and preparing something there, like c4, I guess. Looks very, very good. And very natural because I have an extra pawn exactly on the queen side. Andre thinks karaoke sometimes. Yes, exactly. I do that. C takes d4. Looks like a move that helps me to simplify a position. Queen b1. Why not taking on c8? Don't know. Because now I simply have two extra pawns. Yeah, two extra pawns, come on. Knight g5, creating a threat of queen h7 checkmate. That is a trick. But what about simple knight f6? And now knight d2 is heading, so white tricked himself. Yeah. Absolutely lost. Absolutely lost. King f1. Very strange play. White decided to neglect the material completely in this game. My opponent just says, okay, material things don't matter. The spirit, the soul, that is what matters. Okay. In many cases I agree to this statement, but it's not like 100% true for each and every case. Here material decides, simply. In this particular case. Knight takes f2. Okay. g3 pawn is also very delicious. Knight e2, the next move probably. Knight f5 looks also very good. Yeah, let's put the knight on f5. Additionally protecting g7, which is not, of course, my weakness, but it might be, right? So, there should be the checkmate on g3, I have a feeling. But after I play queen d6, rook goes to g1. My queen goes to f4. And, well, and my queen is placed good. Let's do it. Rook g1, queen f4. Oh, this drops the knight on f3. And I'll take it with pleasure. Yeah. If king goes to h2, then my bishop comes back to d6, finishing the deal. So, it's very hard to say what white did wrong until he played c3 move. So everything was more or less fine. Let's see the 94 moment in details. I think it was a critical one. So 92, as we can see, gives me a chance to play bishop b4, which might be annoying. So I would recommend white just to avoid such a move here. Instead, I guess very natural move is just knight to e5. Also occupying central square, exerting pressure on my knight e4. Maybe at some point even creating a threat of just taking it with the bishop, damaging my pawn structure. But I think the main idea is, of course, to play f3, attacking the knight, and then e4. That's the point. So here I wanted to play something like f6, attacking this knight, and probably forcing it to d3. After which, I guess I can play, knight c6 probably. Just completing development, maybe intending to occupy b4 square with the knight, and so on. So trying to do everything to prevent white's easy f3, e4 plan, or something like that. But after knight lands on d3, we can see it controls b4 square, so it's now possible for white to prepare c4. Maybe even to play c4 immediately next move. So there are a lot of different ways for white to exert pressure on black center. And by the way, it's a typical Catalan maneuvers, 95, 93. It was very, very good for white, in my opinion. I don't think 92 is a decisive mistake. At least it gives me a chance to create some annoying threats. So now, after bishop b4, we can see that white can't play 95 because knight on d2 is hanging. It's not possible also to take my knight on e4 because I just take on e1, I guess. Winning the exchange. Nothing wrong with that. c3 is not possible. And I'm going to play knight c3 or bishop c3 next move, which is quite annoying because I blockade c2 pawn for a long time. Right, a lot of pins here, so I control the situation on the board. So after bishop b4, I already like my position. c3 is of course a blunder, after which, well, black is just winning material and, yeah, gradually winning the game. So 95 instead of 92, my recommendation. Let's go further. Okay. I think one more game with a newcomer, and then we come back to normal order of challenges. Time Trouble Junkie. I've never played. There are a lot of challenges. Okay, Debbie 1 from Poland. Have never played. 3 minutes. That's a bit fast for me today, but okay. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's try to do it. I mean, I usually prefer 5 minutes, but since Debbie 1 plays for the first time, I think he's not aware of that. Yep. It's understandable. Okay. c4, b6, Queen's Indian defense, Kasparov-Petrosian system, a3, knight c3, to which I usually react with this g6. Okay, g3. Now it's definitely possible to take on f3, I think. That is the idea. One of ideas behind this system. And now I will just put all my pawns, almost all my pawns, on light squares mainly. Why? Because I don't have a light squared bishop anymore. So I want to compensate that with a light squared pawn chain. And now we can see first achievement for both sides. So we can notice that white has pair of bishops. At the same time, after this change in the center, after this change of the pawn structure, white's pawn d4 looks very weak. At the same time, bishop g2 looks absolutely limited with my pawns, which becomes looking like not very active piece at very least. So queen b4 looks like a mistake because I play knight c6 attacking d4 and the queen. It looks like I just win a pawn for no compensation. Yeah. Pity enough, but white spoiled his position quite quickly. Trollfjord Paddler reacts with g6 after e6 here. Looks like he never saw me playing that. But yeah, it's possible. Just have a look at the database. Many prominent grandmaster chose this line for black at the main line against Kasparov-Petrosian system, including great player of the past Oleg Ramonishin, including Alexei Shirov, including a lot of simply decent grandmasters like Didishko, for example, from Belarus. He's very famous for his theoretic works on middle game stage during the late Soviet era, let's call it this way. So he's like modern Nemtsovich and so on. He has a great understanding of chess. So it's not an ugly move, I mean, this g6. If black, of course, plays correctly then. Yeah, it also looked very ugly the first time I saw that. But then, when I understood what black does there next, and that black is not really at risk to be squeezed by white's pawns, I started loving this system. But of course it requires serious knowledge and understanding of chess, because one wrong move and of course you're just squeezed, something like that. So here, as we can see, white simply lost the track quickly in the beginning of the game. So after c4, b6, a3, bishop b7, and g6, in my opinion, bishop g5 should be the main move. Bishop g5. There is also an interesting try, queen c2, which looks very natural, because what is the logic behind white's a3 and knight c3? To prepare e4. Sorry. So why not to keep trying? So queen c2 looks like a great move, just preparing this e4. And here black reacts with a very interesting bishop takes f3, damaging the pawn structure, so black will definitely have the compensation for missing pair of bishops. And this is based on the very concrete idea of attacking d4 pawn, which is now a bit abandoned. So usually black does the following. So if white takes with this pawn, then simply bishop g7, castles, and what I did exactly. So d5, c6, d5, knight c6, knight e7, also an interesting maneuver. If white takes with this pawn, trying to achieve a bit more complicated position, so trying to play e4 anyway, then knight c6 looks interesting. And now if d5, then knight d4, queen d1, c5, very interesting line. So actually we have something very similar to Nemtsovich idea, bishop b4, bishop c3, but like in the mirror, right? So now we played like bishop takes on f3, g takes f3. It's the same pawn structure, but on the other side. So again, black has some compensation for a missing bishop. Knights are quite maneuverable here. around this pawn's weaknesses. So for example, knight can go to f5, then to h4, this knight through h5 to f4 at some point, and so on. Very interesting position, full of fight, full of play, full of life, I would say. So again, if you don't believe me, just check the database. It's absolutely unclear and very interesting. Okay, let's continue. Well, one more newcomer, okay? So it was not very long game. Okay, Jose Manuel from Mexico. Again, we never played, so I accept. 5 minutes. Premium user, everything is cool. Let's do it. D4. Well, so at the moment I just play with black, right? Each and every game. Not very pleasant, but what can I do? So now we have definitely one of the lines of London system, right? Yes, 100%, especially after d5. It's definitely the London. Knight e5. Followed by probably bishop to b5 next move. So if I play knight d7, definitely bishop b5 will be played. Okay, let's castle. Let's just castle. Now I'll just play c5, queen c7, normal sequence of moves, exerting pressure on white's center, right? So I control e4 square, very good. And I do believe we will have sort of transposition to one of the main lines here. So the difference is that black usually plays the c5 prior to doing anything else, but I don't think it is a big difference. And now what? Now queen c7, I think, and then knight e7. Or knight c6 even. Yeah, knight c6 looks better. Because I have this typical maneuver like knight e7, knight f5. Okay, knight f3, and I think that it makes sense now to play knight to e7. So now I want to do what? I want to play knight e4, and I will have this typical square f5 on my knight. The typical idea to stop white's attack on the king side. Knight g6 is also an idea here. What about just grabbing the space? Because white definitely wanted to play c4, right? Yeah. Or maybe that was just a preparation of this. Bishop b1. Who knows? I guess it's time. It's time to occupy e4. Exerting some pressure on c3. Maybe intended even to play f6. So what about f6 now? Where the knight goes? Is there a square for the knight? Not quite sure. And by the way, the bishop on f4 is hanging. That was my basic idea. Oh, really? What is that? Take c4. I have the same question, where the knight goes. Because knight is definitely hanging, right? Yeah. Okay, let's grab an f4. Maybe it was even better to start with the h5, forcing the knight to h2, but okay, this wins the pawn for me. Or not. Well, not really, because my c4 is hanging. Yeah, it appeared not very simple. Okay, c takes b3, he will take with the queen, I think, to counter-attack e6 and b5. Then bishop d5 move. Queen takes b5. Is there something for me or not? Rook b8. Let's say queen e2, rook b2. Looks interesting, but it doesn't feel like enough to compensate missing material. But let's try it. It looks at least better than queen takes f4, because after bc4, bc4, knight c4, well, I don't really like this position for black. But I might be wrong. It might be absolutely wrong. Maybe simple queen b4, sorry, queen f4 is better than this cb3. Well, let's try. At least it leads to some activation of my pieces, which I usually appreciate. I mean, when my pieces are active. Even at the price of some material, like the pawn. But I'm not sure that white will have so easy way to keep this pawn. So let's say queen b3, bishop d5, queen b5, rook b8, then rook goes to b2, already attacking a2, f4 is still hanging. So it shouldn't be that easy, I mean, for white to regain the material. But I agree that probably queen f4 immediately was just easier, and yeah. But I like my position here. I mean, a2, the pawn I can grab right now. f4 is still hanging. Why should it be bad? Okay. So rook d8. Looks like a move, just attacking d4, which became vulnerable after white played c4. And material is even, by the way. So I just have initiative for free. Should be good. Alright. e4 is hanging? I don't think so. Very dangerous to take this pawn. Anyway, let's counterattack. d4 should be attacked. d4 should be captured. If white takes e4 now, I think knight takes d4 should be very nice. At the same time, after knight takes e4, queen c6 is possible. Just starting exploiting the power of this bishop on a8, which is at the moment not that cool, but once there is no pawn on this diagonal, starts being very good. Let's just take on d4. Of course, rook c2 is also very promising, but I guess this simple means now should be as a priority, because I have two extra pawns, right? I have a bishop and almost complete domination, because I control everything here. Everything is hanging. Yeah, bishop d5. Increasing the pressure. The only problem is the time. That can be also not that great of a problem, because my opponent also in the time trouble. So I should be just careful not to blunder something like checkmate on the 8. After queen h5. Yeah. No, what is that? Let's prevent the check on d8, simply. Intermediate move. And now there is nothing wrong to take the minor piece. Oh, that was speedy. I thought I could capture on g3, but queen c2 pinned my queen. But anyway, it was winning. So, where white made a mistake, not quite sure, because I'm not a great expert of the London system from white's perspective. I usually play it with black, but I think white missed something when I played knight e4. Yeah, so white missed the problem with the knight. I already have a threat of f6, and it's critical. So maybe it was necessary to do what? To play knight g5? No, knight g5 doesn't work. I'm not quite sure even. Maybe knight f3 was already not that cool. I'm not sure. Come on. I don't know. So c3, I put queen c7. So I already have a threat of knight c6, knight e7, all this sort of things. Bishop h2, maybe bishop h2 here, but still I can play knight e4. And there will be the same problem. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe somewhere c4. Because I like my position already here. After knight e4. Just play f6. And yes, I have very simple play here. Yeah, so maybe queen f4 was even easier than to take on b3. Yeah, but this was also very good, right? So I have free initiative and so on. Okay. So anyways, was an interesting game with an interesting encounter. Something should be changed in the sense of the move order in the opening, I believe, because black simply achieved what he wanted easily here. Maybe c4 instead of rook c1. By the way, also an interesting idea, just to play c4 here. I know that it's probably a risk, positional risk, but looks interesting. Yeah. Okay. So now let's get back to normal order of challenges. So the first was Don G. Let's play. E4. The first game with white pieces, right? Very good. Kind of relief. Whew. Thanks God. So I've protected the black pieces. Now it's time to do something with white pieces. Let's protect d4 square, because I have a feeling that black wants to play e5 and then knight d4. But now knight d4 is not possible, which is very nice. Which is very good. And we have just normal, well, not very normal, because usually pawn is on c4, like King's Indian pawn structure. Typical layout. So what should I do here? Just attack on the king side, I think. g4, h4, h5, knight g3, and so on. Bishop d7. Well, developing the pieces, but it might be quite slow. So it doesn't look like black is going to arrange something fast. On the king side, which means I may have an upper hand on my attack on the king side. What did that? Queen c8, bishop takes g4. Don't think it's good here. Let's put the knight on g3 anyway. It was prepared, it was planned. So from here my knight simply protects e4 pawn, gives another knight the square on e2, supports the attack connected with h5 move. Also at some point I can put my knight on f5, even sacrificing it. A lot of ideas behind having the knight on g3. And now, what to do now? So b4 is not kind of very dangerous threat, I think, because e4 pawn is protected. If b4, knight e2, then this sacrifice on g4 is definitely not correct. So I think I can continue with the h5. Easy Rider 27, by the way, says h5 don g. Yeah, it was definitely interesting for black to try h5 to stop my attack there, but it creates just a tension there. So in many cases I can sacrifice the pawn on g4, but then to break through with the h5 anyway. Knight g4, what is that? Just dropping the piece, I think. Yeah, it's sacrifice for nothing. No compensation here. So now I can do what? I can put my knight on b1, which is passive, or I can put it on a4, which is just normal, stopping black's pawns there. Attacking b4 at the moment. Oh, f5, seriously. I think this breaks black's pawn structure after bishop g4. Yeah. To take on b4 is the possibility number 1. Simply to take on g6, possibility number 2. Bishop g5 is also a possibility here, preparing, taking on g6, opening up the h file. Or just to take, yeah, here to start with, to see what black is going to do. Because if knight takes g6 and queen h2, if h takes g6, I think the same. Maybe I will start with rook f1, of course, to prevent black's rook f3 or something. Yeah, rook f1 looks a bit better. But queen h2 is also good. Rook f3, check, king goes to f8 or f7, then what? No clear follow-up, so let's start with the rook f1. This, yeah, makes my attack a bit slower, but this prevents black from closing the f file, activating the rook, and so on. Yeah, simplification is also not a bad idea for me, since I have extra minor piece, right? For only one pawn now. No chances, absolutely. Not quite sure what black hopes for, but it looks like just a position with an extra minor piece and no compensation. And time-wise, I'm also better. I have more time on the clock. Queen c7. Bishop g5. Yeah. To simplify even more, just to play Queen h2. Let's try Queen h2. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I'm not quite sure that it is the best move here. I mean, knight c6. I simply prefer normal development like knight f6 castles and then c6 b5, just normal bird's play. Knight c6 probably is also playable, no questions, but after knight e7 queen d2 I would prefer playing f5 immediately. So anyway, having this pawn structure, right, black has to undermine the pawn e4 with the f pawn. So why not to do that prior to occupying f6 with the knight? So f5 followed by knight f6 looks much more logical to me. Okay, knight f6 immediately could be also done here, but here instead of castling, I mean, probably deserved attention for black to play c6 or c5 even, provoking me to take on c6, which makes black's position much easier to play. So undermining the center this way, also an interesting try. So let's say c6, I think it's better than c5, because after c5, I can just ignore it, because the part of my advantage here is that I have more space, right? And giving up the d5 pawn means giving up the advantage in space. So after c5, I can ignore this pawn. Of course, you have a chance to play a6, b5, like in Ruy Lopez and so on. But yeah, it will be slow. By the way, here I can switch to positional play, like knight g3 maybe, controlling b5 square, then occupying c4 with the bishop, castles short, a4, again, typical play, trying to get use of the c4 square, and then gradually the knight through f1, d2 gets to c4. So c6, I would strongly recommend here. Before white did this castling long, because after that c6 is problematic because of the weakness of d6 pawn. Here it is just in time, looks like that at least. So let's say d takes c6, b takes c6, the most promising continuation in my opinion. And after castling, let's say attacking this pawn, I think black can afford just playing d5. Everything looks fine to make this move. And I think black has just a normal play here. I think white shouldn't take on c6, instead trying something, I don't know even what, maybe knight g3, maybe castles immediately. But then cd5 is coming, ed5, and at least you have f5 square for your pieces, so also with some counterplay. Because what black achieved in the game was a position absolutely without counterplay. I just expand on the king side, grab the space there, and yeah, that's very bad. h5, there was a recommendation from chat. Yeah, it's possible, definitely deserved the attention. I can continue here two ways. So the first is just g5, grabbing the space more, and then f4. It's very good because, well, none of black's pieces really occupies e5 square, which means I simply open up a position in my favor, making almost all light pieces very, very bad here. I mean, minor pieces, come on, what am I talking about? Yeah, this is because I'm still ill, right? I just confused some terms in my head. So almost all minor pieces are very bad here in black's position. I mean, I have just more space and much better position. Another typical idea to meet h5 with a knight g3, just sacrificing the pawn on g4, maybe even the one on f3, but anyway, making this breakthrough. Well, it might be double-edged, of course, but in many cases it's quite promising. I would personally prefer just playing g5 with no risk, just improving my position, and then f4. I feel very good here, I guess. But it was worth doing with black, because when I played h5 myself, it was already over, so black is just packed here in a box. and there is no chance to survive it. It's gradually lost. Okay. Anyways, let's continue. The next was Sebi 1996, and again I'm playing with black against this guy. So 2 previous games I do remember I played with black, and once again I play with black. That's awful. Okay. So if I play knight c6, there will be knight c3, knight f6, and d4. So this variation. Let's try d6 against this guy. d4. All right. E takes d4. Let's remember the time when I was very, very young. I used to play that in each and every game. Bishop e3. Definitely not the best move. Bishop f4 is the main line. Or bishop e2. So bishop e3 is a good idea against g6, bishop g7. So Larsen variation. Against Antoshin variation with the bishop on e7. The bishop should be on f4. f3. Wow. This weakens white's position a lot. So I can start playing d5. Might be very good. Yeah, let's do it. The point is that black has the advantage in development. The king is already castled, while white is stuck in the center. So I just try to open up a position. It looks very good, especially after f3, which additionally weakens white's position, especially this e3 square. Okay, knight takes d5. Queen d5. I have a gorgeous queen on d5. It can't be really bothered. This also stops white in the vast majority of variations from castling long, because a2 is heading. Yeah, I like my position already. There is a threat of queen d5. For example, after this knight b3, but after queen e5 there might be queen d4. I don't have anything specific. So maybe it's better for me to play queen e6. It looks a bit ugly, but at the same time I still have queens on the board. Yeah, let's try queen e6, because I want to attack, right? And this prevents white from exchanging queens easily. Because after queen e5, it's really annoying that white has tempo move queen d4. Kuzma asks, who was your trainer when you were younger? Oh, great guy. Great man. Pavel Savitsky. So he's my guru. He's my first and only true teacher in chess and in many things in the whole life. King f2. Okay. Now the king is placed a bit ugly, but I still have to do something to exploit his weaknesses around the king. Maybe white is still not worse. Maybe I just don't see the correct move. Rook e8 looks very promising. Let's try this trick. Just exerting pressure on the bishop e3 since it is the most vulnerable piece. It is the most vulnerable square in white's camp. So now I want to play bishop h4 and take the bishop, or take the bishop with the queen at some point. Yeah. Marlon 26 Pavel, surname? Pavel is the name, surname Savitsky, queen d2. Okay, bishop h4 g3 gives me nothing. Okay, let's keep developing the pieces. Bishop d3. Knight b4, knight e5. Let's try knight e5. Rook e1. Let's grab the bishop. It's sort of achievement. Maybe not that great, but at least something, right? At least something. Okay, this gives me additional tempi, I think. Bishop f6, queen takes c7, then sort of bishop b5 attacking the queen. Where the queen goes after that? Oh, my rook on d8 is hanging. Stop. It's not that easy. Yeah. But I can try this interesting thing. So first check. Now bishop f6. Now I have h3 square for my queen. That is my idea. So the access to some new weaknesses. For instance, after that, so queen h3 looks promising. Immediately takes, goes to e3. Yeah, should be very interesting. Let's go there. Okay, and what to do now? Don't want to do this, but looks like I'm more or less forced. Yeah, I don't have a lot. Maybe position is completely equal now. Probably it is. But at least I will try to exert some pressure. Knight f4 is coming. Very annoying. Okay. I won on time. I think in the very end I'm better because I have a bishop, but probably with the accurate play, white has to keep this position. Again, my opponent played very decent game. As usual, it was extremely hard for me to outplay him, and I failed to do this in the sense of just playing chess, right? I mean, what happened on the board. So the critical moment was after king f2. That is important to understand. So after king f2, I think I've lost the chance. I've lost the chance. So king f2. How to play this correctly? I'm not quite sure. Yeah, probably rook e8 was not correct. So rook d8 looks much more natural here. Bishop d3. Then what? Knight c6 maybe. Again, developing the pieces, just trying to play knight b4, knight e5. And if rook e1, then something like even queen e5 can be possible. Just attacking b2 pawn and h2 at the same time. Again, I'm not quite sure what is going on here. Maybe I have nothing. Maybe white is fine here to keep the balance. But rook e8 was, well, sort of trick, which appeared not very dangerous for white. So rook e8, just queen d2. I don't have a proper follow-up, I think. So bishop h4 gives me nothing. Bishop b4, okay, just c3. Yeah, so it was just a trick, nothing more. And rook d8 was just a normal development move. Okay, for white, of course, instead of bishop e3, it's necessary to play bishop f4. Bishop e3 is a bad idea against bishop e7 system. Anyways, let's go further. Let's go further. Duke Crusher, the next challenger. Marlon 26 can't find my teacher on the FIDE list. Yes, because my teacher has no international rating. He has a local Ukrainian rating. And believe me, he's a great guy, so... He's a Soviet candidate master, which equals... a good Soviet candidate master, which equals to international master 100% nowadays. And at some points... to even GM. So I know what I'm talking about when I say that he's great. He's definitely great, you know. Knight f6. Alright, there are a lot of different ways to play this position. I will try this interesting approach with f3, e4, d4, c3. Of course, if my opponent gives me a chance to do that. Looks like no chances. 97, 92. c5, c3. And by the way, this idea about being a chess player and so on. Yes, of course, chess teacher should be a chess player, a good chess player. But it's not necessary. For example, the famous coach from Lviv, Kart, his surname is Kart. He was like, yeah, it's very hard to tell you what his level is. He wasn't even a candidate master, let's say. But he managed to prepare the guys like Romanishin, Belavsky, and so on. These famous Lviv grandmasters, being just not even a candidate master. Can you imagine that? Yeah. It's great. Simply great. So the teacher should be the teacher, first of all. And of course, there are more chances that the teacher will be a good teacher if he's a good chess player at the same time, right? But the first is different. The most important is just the ability to explain the things. Oh, c4 can't be good at all. Now I have very pleasant French. Very pleasant French with enormous advantage in space. Just enormous one. Alright. Alright. Let's castle here anyway. I was quite lucky, of course, to be trained by Pavel Savitsky, because his understanding of chess is just amazing, simply amazing. And he managed to share it with me. Well, in such a situation, there is a very common idea, so-called the attack in a strong point, which was presented by Igor Zaitsev. So the idea is just to play f5 right now. Just to play f5 without preparation. Let's try it. So I attack in a strong point, I mean the point which doesn't look like a weak one for black. f5, it was protected. But this brings my other pieces some energy. So for example, knight goes to f4, then to h5. I can even think of playing g4 at some point. Maybe it was not a correct moment to do this. Maybe I should have prepared it more carefully, patiently. But the idea is the following, yeah. Sacrifice the pawn, but I definitely have the access to some points. But I agree it wasn't completely correct in this concrete situation. So it was necessary for black to play h5, I believe. And for me, instead of king h1, to play knight h5 immediately. That is very important, to occupy this square. Alright, so let's do this. I want to get to f6 actually, with my knight. That's my basic idea here. So to do that, I need to exchange this bishop h4 somehow. Sorry, bishop e7. Yeah, I say some strange things today. Sorry, guys. So g2 is heading, but knight g5 is possible now. What should I do? Knight g5. Yeah, let's try knight g5. Or I'm not quite sure. Knight g2 is also possible there. But okay, come on. Too many thoughts. We need more actions. Knight g5, attacking f7. If bishop takes g5, I will be probably very, very happy to see that, because it gives up the control over dark squares all around the board. If rook goes to f8, that will be also nice. If knight takes g2 right now, then knight takes f7, I think. Just winning the exchange at the very least. Okay, h6, knight takes f7, rook takes g2, right? Starts looking stupid for white. But what can I do? I've already played that. At least I won a very important pawn on f7. Which might be very useful for me. Because e6 is now vulnerable. There is no dark square bishop anymore on the board, which is also nice. So I play knight f6 and rook g2. To start with bishop f4 looks like a natural idea. Improving position of my bishop. I'm still down a pawn, but since my bishop on f4 has no counterpart, I did like my position already. And now g2 is hanging, right? Let's protect it. Yeah. So knight takes f4. Okay, knight takes f4. Looks very good. I just attack e6, f5 is hanging, d5 is hanging. A lot of hanging material here. Let's take on f5. I'm just much better positionally. To take on e6 or not to take on e6, I'm not sure. Let's take it. Should be alright to do that. Extra pawn now. Knight on f4, is it hanging or not? I don't think it's just hanging, but let's protect it just in case it will be hanging at some point. To take on h6 looks natural. Check. One more check. This drops the queen. Yeah, very nice. Okay, so it wasn't completely correct, of course, but the point behind playing this f5 is just the following. So I just make the strong point. So f5 is definitely a strong point, right? So black controls it heavily and so on. So I make this point absolutely useless for black, and well, I sacrifice some material, but I also give my pieces other points to occupy, something like that. So in details, this idea is described in Igor Zaitsev's book, Attacking the Strong Point. So it's a full concept of doing a very interesting philosophical book. So I strongly recommend to read it, but I'm not quite sure if it is translated to English from Russian. It might be very interesting book. Not a very famous one, but very, very, very interesting. So here f5 was premature, 100%. So it was better for me to play king h1 maybe first, and then to play f5 at the proper moment. Maybe just to play g4, f5, and so on. Another idea for me was just to castle the different side and simply play g4, f5, and so on. Whenever black plays something like f6 or f5, I just take on f6, or I take en passant, and I have e5 square for my minor pieces and so on. So white should be better here for sure. It's like very pleasant version of the French. And later after this, so the first moment here, so h5 should be played with black, just to prevent my knight from going to h5, and I think black is already better here. So knight f5 was just like, yeah, to demonstrate you the idea. I mean f5 to demonstrate you the idea, the concept, but it wasn't correct in this particular case. So I don't get to my dream square h5 with the knight here. Black plays correctly. He played rook to g8, which was a mistake, because now I have a chance to play knight h5, but I made the mistake as well. I played king h1, again giving the chance to play h5, and it should have been played for sure. Yeah, so knight f8 gives me this square, after which I feel very good already. So that was alright. Here maybe knight g5 was too much, so simple capture on h4 was possible, then gradually preparing g4 move. What else? What else? Yeah, maybe just, well, rook f2 doesn't look like a good idea. Maybe that g5 was not that bad. I'm not quite sure. So yeah, somebody suggested knight takes g2, but I think h6 was okay. After knight f7, it was necessary to take on g2. Yeah, I thought it is just the only move. The point is that if I take on g2, then after knight takes g2, the bishop on e3 is hanging. So if I take this rook, knight takes e3. Black is simply winning here in this line. So I can't take on g2. I have to go away with the queen somewhere, or play rook f2, which also looks cheesy. Maybe rook f2 is the only normal move for white already. Queen d1, just rook to g8 looks good. Or rook h7 still good, but the rook is already on g2. It's not a catastrophe for white, because black has no like checkmate and attack here or something, but well, black managed to grab very important pawn. So rook h7 was a mistake because it gave me a chance just to regroup. After knight d6, e6, queen d6, I don't lose g2, which means that I'm still down a pawn only, but I have pair of bishops. This bishop on b7 is definitely out of play, and yeah, white is simply better here. Maybe not that better, maybe not winning, but definitely better in my opinion. Okay, so bishop takes g5, obvious. Au revoir. Bishop takes g5. Let's see, just a sec. Bishop takes g5. So bishop takes g5. Okay, bishop takes g5. So what? But don't accept that. Don't understand. If bishop takes g5, white is just winning, I think. So knight takes g2, let's say. Many thought it would be just decisive, but I'm not forced to take the knight. I can play bishop f6, let's say, winning the game. Something like that. Yeah. So, by the way, knight g2 is the same problem. If knight g2 immediately, then I just take on f7 instead of taking on g2. So knight e3, queen e3. I calculated this line during the game, and I thought, okay, I just win the exchange. So yeah, it looks like that. No problems. So black played absolutely correct h6 move, and okay, bishop g5 and h6 is recommended, but h6 immediately leads to the same. I mean, why black should give up this bishop e7, which is a very important one. But okay, let's have a look at that line. So bishop g5, h6. Okay, I still play bishop f6. Okay, come on, I'm just taking on h4. What the hell is going on? What are we discussing? I just take on h4. That's it. Game over. Yeah, it's not even serious. All right. Let's go further. So the next challenger was Carlsen Super Light. Accept. And it will be probably the last game for today. So as I said, I'm not quite good still. Sense of health. Still need some recovery to be able to come up with the next episode of Training Tuesday. Next Tuesday, right? Because I was forced to skip the last one due to these health problems. Sorry for that, for making somewhat shorter session today. But I think everybody will benefit from it long term. All right. So, exchanged variation of Ruy Lopez on the board. A lot of different ways for black to protect e5 pawn, not to protect e5 pawn. There are moves even like bishop e7 and knight e7 possible for black. So bishop d6 is one of possible moves. And I'm going just to prevent bishop g4 move, which is in many cases quite an annoying one. And to try to prepare d4. This looks very natural for white. It's a good plan. Player number 5, no chance for me. Not today, sorry. Not today. So if e takes d4, then e5 wins a piece. So black definitely has to do something like knight d7, I think. After which I will just keep developing my pieces. So interesting version. Yeah. Looked like the obvious only move to me. Otherwise, I either win a pawn or something, or just win a piece in some lines. So 97 looks good. Okay. Now if I take on e5 twice, the bishop simply recaptures. I achieve nothing there. Bishop g5 looks like an interesting trick, forcing black to play f6. Weakening the position a bit. At the same time, well, probably it's a programmatic move for black anyway, so I can't see real need in provoking black doing it, because black will probably do this himself. So maybe it's a good idea for me just to start with the knight c3, I don't know. Knight d2 is also an interesting move, preparing knight to c4. But in this case, e takes d4 becomes possible. Oh, another interesting try for me is just to play c3, and now if black takes on d4, I recapture with a pawn, having the pawn center. Yeah, this looks better than anything else. Rook e8, and now knight d2 looks just absolutely playable, a normal move, preparing knight to c4. Black will definitely have some problems with completing the development here, right? Because I can't see a way to activate bishop c8 quickly. Bishop on b7 will look a bit strange, but maybe it's still playable to do something like b6, bishop b7. Looks a bit unusual at very least. Oh, b5. Yeah, this stops me from playing knight c4, that's for sure. At the same time, it weakens black's position a bit. Maybe it's not that critical, on the other hand. Let's keep improving position of the knight. Since black will definitely occupy b7 with the bishop, I have a feeling that they will do that. He will do that, come on. Then f5 will lack some defense, so the idea of transferring the knight there becomes quite logical. Yeah, something like that, right? So knight g3, knight f5. So black has pair of bishops, but the pawn structure is not ideal, and I definitely have some compensation. So knight f5, what is about knight f5 now? Or just developing the pieces like bishop e3, queen d2, I don't know. Not quite sure which is better, but let's start with the knight f5. Looks like a move. Just exerting some pressure. Some concrete pressure on black's position. Knight to f6. This gives me a chance to take twice on e5 if I want to regain the balance in the sense of bishops present on the board. I'm not sure that I achieve anything concrete there. So d takes e5, bishop e5, queen d8, rook a takes d8, knight takes e5, rook takes e5. e4 is hanging. I can play f3, simply protecting the pawn, and bishop f4 will be a threat. Yeah, this looks very promising. So we'll have opposing colored bishops, but at the same time, we'll have kind of extra pawn on the king side. Not a great advantage, of course, I understand, but it looks like a very decent position for white. And quite annoying for black, because bishop f4 is just right of grabbing the pawn on c7 now. This probably forces black to go back with the rook to e8 or something, or maybe to e6. But then again, bishop f4 attacking the pawn. Yeah, this just gives me an extra pawn, I think. Maybe black will have some compensation for it, but I don't think it is complete. Yeah, let's take it. Rook d2, okay. Rook d1. The point is that black can't connect another rook to this rook on d2, which makes me feel quite comfortable. Unless I miss something. Something serious like knight e4. Which is possible, by the way. Still not sure it was a complete compensated, but knight e4 was definitely an interesting try. Oh, here I just take on h6. Yeah, why not? Two extra pawns. The one will be doubled, but still the extra one, which is good, which is huge. Now my bishop controls both d8 square and d2, so prevent an activation of both black's rooks. What is that? Let's simplify position a bit. So, huge blunder of the rook on e8. Okay, so I'm not sure that bishop d6 is a good idea in general, but it's playable. After h3, I do believe again that development of the knight on f6 is a bit dubious. So probably knight e7 is a bit better, preparing knight to g6, and black is in the control of the center. Knight f6 is also good, but after rook e1, I think knight d7 immediately should be played, something like that. And after d4, I don't know, maybe even just taking on d4. Because giving me a chance to play d4 and then c3, just creating this strong center, it looks a bit dubious to me. So after castling d4, knight e7 and c3, I think white is already a bit better. And the rest is quite pleasant play for white, quite typical one. I just developed my pieces. So here, it was another critical moment. So knight f6 gives me definitely very pleasant advantage. Not very huge, but quite decent one. So instead of playing knight f6 like black did in the game, I do believe bishop f8 was a move. Still keeping the bishop on the board, then maybe trying something like king h7 and g6, trying to get rid of my knight. I would have probably played something like bishop e3 here. Maybe, I'm not quite sure, because after that ed4 is possible. Maybe queen c2 move, protecting e4 pawn first, prior to doing anything else. Maybe a4, just exerting some pressure here. Maybe even b3 followed by bishop b2 can be played here with white. Sorry, it is a big variety of different ideas. Of course, very rich position for both sides. But bishop f8 was definitely the move to fight. Because after knight f6, takes. And f3, okay, maybe white has not a great advantage, but definitely it is an advantage because white have 4 against 3. Black no longer has a pair of bishops like in the normal exchange variation to compensate it. And there is a concrete problem with the c7 pawn, so it was necessary to go away with the rook immediately somewhere. I'm not sure where, maybe to e6. And then after bishop f4 to protect c7 somehow. But everything looks a bit passive. Let's say rook d7, I just play rook to d1. And again, there is a huge problem with protecting c7. So probably this c7 simply drops after that. Or black has to do something really passive like rook e8, then bishop f4, rook c8. This is of course not good. So this makes white's position much better one. Another interesting idea is to blockade c5 here, to play bishop e3 and to try to play bishop c5 instead, making this bishop also very bad. So white is better 100% and bishop f8 with a chance to prevent this sort of things. Yep, okay. Anyways, thanks for this game. Thanks for being with me today. Sorry for being a bit ill still. I do believe that next training Tuesday will be just all right, in the sense of being completely ready to share my energy with you. I do hope you enjoyed today's show, today's explanations, and today's insights. Today's games maybe as well, so the quality was not that bad, I guess, at least for the ill guy. And I do hope I will see you very, very soon. Well, see you definitely next Tuesday and next Friday. Wish you a great weekend. And do not forget to promote to the premium account. This will give you much more opportunities. See you guys. Thanks a lot.